Okay, call the special meeting of the Council of Hamel to order, please, for March 25th, 2025. So I need a motion to approve the agenda.
I, Councilor McKenzie, move to approve the agenda with the following addition at 6B, fire truck municipal capital borrowing board for the Devonshire.
Do I have a seconder?
Councilor Holt will second.
Any questions, comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried, thank you. Any disclosures tonight, Council? We're good? Okay, we have Jill here as usual for her annual pilgrimage to Hanwell to go over the audited financial statements. So I'll turn the floor over to Jill right away.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, so I gave you two packages. The first one is Schedule 1. It's the smaller one. It's only 2 pages. This is the comparison of revenue and expenditures to budget in the previous year unconsolidated. So this is the general operating fund, how you normally operate. So the first page is a synopsis. So your general services revenue. The first column is your budget. The second column is actual, and the third column is actual for last year, so for comparative. Your property tax warrant, of course, is your biggest revenue. It came in right on budget. Tourism levy was a little bit higher than you had expected at 119. Fire protection, so this is the amount that you receive from neighboring LSDs for fire services. So it was a little bit higher than budgeted at 150. Facility rental, so that's the community halls and event space. Recreation, building permits, community events, and rentals, that's the outside recreation like the fields and the revenue that you generate from sports and camps and whatnot. Miscellaneous is pretty much anything that doesn't fall into those other buckets. Provincial grants, the community and funding and equalization grant, the surplus of the second previous year that you have to bring in the current year, and then the payment in lieu of taxes, PILT that the province levies. So overall, you had budgeted revenue of 4.2 million, and you came in at 4.6 million. So the largest increases were the provincial grants for the most part. So you took advantage of some grants for funding communities. On the expenditure side, they're segmented into general government services, protective, transportation, environmental health, environmental development, recreation, and culture, and fiscal services. I'm going to go into those in more detail in the next pages, but overall you had $4.6 million in actual expenses. So you ended with a small deficit of $1,000. So that's pretty bang on a $4.6 million budget to only be off by $1,000. The next page is the detail of each segment. So your general government services comprise of legislative, which is everybody in this room, and the associated costs. You had budgeted $170,000, came in at $159,000. Administrative services, so this is some salaries, administrative costs, office supplies, legal services. The half of this building that is for municipal purposes, and then some general other expenses that fall into administrative. You had budgeted $596,000 and it came in at $530,000. Financial management and common services, so the audit, civic relations, the cost of assessment, and regional and collaborative services. You had budgeted $275,000, came in at $266,000. And then the public liability insurance grants to organizations and some general other government services. You had budgeted $83,000 and came in at $69,000. So overall, you were under budget in general government services by about $100,000. The next page outlines protective services. So this is your fire, emergency, etc. So fire, your overall budget was $544,000, came in at $543,000. So I don't know what you did to the firefighters this year, Terry. But their cost control was the best I have ever seen it. Honestly,
I run a tight ship.
you do, yeah. On the other protective services, emergency measures, that's your Sentinel and whatnot. Your animal and pest control, and then your contributions to public safety were pretty much bang on budget. Transportation services, so you don't own any of the roads, but you do have street lights, street signs, and then you have a contribution, a small contribution to the Regional Service Commission. So you budgeted 68,000 in transportation, and you spent about 59,000, so you were under budget there as well. On the environmental health, this is your solid waste collection, disposal, and recycling. You had budgeted 615, came in at 540. So there's a couple of fit factors here. On the solid waste disposal, you budget based on what you think people are going to throw out. That's your tipping fees. So it's entirely based on volume. And I believe because you were ending your recycling contract, you thought you would end up with more volume in disposal, which didn't actually happen. So you budgeted 615 in expenses, and 540 was the actual cost. So again, about $75,000 in savings in solid waste disposal. On the environmental development services, this is your local planning, building inspection, economic development, tourism. You had budgeted 473. You were a little over budget in this category of 490, and that was mostly to do with tourism expenses. So that is the portion of the levy that you receive, which if you remember a couple pages ago was higher. So the corresponding expenses that you paid out in tourism dollars was higher. So we look at those percentages, are they going up at the same rate, the expenses and the revenue, and they were, so it made sense to us. On recreation and culture, so the cost of running the community center personnel, parks and playgrounds, park personnel, so your summer students, recreation personnel, the contribution to recreation for the city, that's the shared services agreement, and then some other recreation. So you had budgeted 773, came in at 700,000. Part of that is in parks and playgrounds, you had budgeted for some capital items that I moved out of recreation and into fiscal services because you've capitalized them. They're larger expenses that will be used over time, so we bring them out of general operations and put them into capital. So that was the driver of most of that, was an adjustment that we had recommended. On the fiscal services side, the principal that you pay on long-term debt on your debentures was $85,000. The interest that you paid on the long-term debt was $59,000. Bank charges were about $1,500. The deficit of the second prior year, so there was a small leftover from the LSD that needed to come in at $628. And lease payments on some trucks were about $30,000. So we budgeted for debt charges, $181,000, came in at $176,000. On the capital expenditure side, so this is where you see a big increase. You had budgeted about $224,000 for capital, and you spent $434,000. So you did a lot of investments this year in larger items. And then at the end of the year, because you had this surplus of revenue that you hadn't expected, you had expected a transfer to reserve of about $150,000, and you ended up putting $550,000 away. But I know that the municipality is growing and it's fairly new and you're investing a lot in infrastructure, so it's good that you're putting it away. And as we saw earlier, the fire truck going by, I'm sure you have lots of things to spend it on. So overall, that's a snapshot, or a detailed snapshot of where you're at for the year. And I'm going to pause there and take any questions before I do the highlights of the consolidated statements. No? Okay. So the official statements, the consolidated statements, of course, have the independent audit report on it. Our opinion is it's a clear audit. We did not find any indication of fraud, error, or mismanagement of any sort. We did make several adjustments that Terry will do on the internal books, but there was nothing outstanding that was not adjusted. So good fiscal stewardship there. The first page with numbers on it is your consolidated statement of financial position. This is the snapshot in time at December 31st. It's a balance sheet if you're in the for-profit world. You have financial assets, so cash in the bank. This is operating and the amount that's in reserves of about $3.7 million. Accounts receivable was about $88,000, so that is revenue that you would have booked in December and received in January or February. Federal government and its agencies, that's your HST rebate that was expected to come in at $37,000. And then a pension asset. So this pension asset is, that number is given by the province for the municipal employee pension plan. So Hanwell has a pension asset of $64,000, which is good because there's some municipalities that have a pension liability, which means that their portion of the pension is underfunded. Yours is not, so that's a good thing. On the financial liability side, accounts payable and accruals is 231. This is much larger than it normally is, but that was the deposit on the fire truck. Sick leave accrual was 61,000, so your employees accrue 1.25 days per year. And fortunately, they were not very sick this year, so you have an outstanding sick leave accrual that has grown from the prior year. Deferred revenue, this is your gas tax funding, so this is gas tax funding that you have received but not yet spent. So there's about 1.6 million almost eligible to be spent on future gas tax projects. And then your long-term debt, so you're eating down at your debt, but you're about 1.8 million. However, having said that, last year you were in a net deficit position, a net debt position of 486,000, and this year you've swung into a net asset position. So you've come out of the red and into the black by 188,000. So having scanned the municipal records for the province, when we were doing the audit, there's only about 12 municipalities that have net assets. The rest are all in debt. So if you want to measure yourself against your neighbors, you're in a good financial position, even though you are taking on debt to invest, because your assets are higher than your liabilities, then you're in a good position. So as counselors, you should take some comfort in that. The non-financial assets, so this is your tangible capital assets, what you've invested in, and then your prepaid expenses and deposits of 65,000. So your overall accumulated surplus is $7.3 million. The next page is the income statement, the statement of operations and change in accumulated surplus. And essentially this is the same as what we went over with revenue and expenses segmented, except for we've added in amortization expenses. And you take out your capital expenditures that you had planned to do and your reserve transfers. And we also consolidate the revenue to have any funding for capital projects or your gas tax funds that were recognized come into revenue. So this number is on a consolidated all of your funds basis. So the budget is $4.2 million in revenue. It came in at $4.7 million. Mostly the difference between the number that we talked about before and this one is bringing in those gas tax contributions of $100,000 that was recognized in a year. On the expense side, same segments except fiscal services isn't there. So you spend about $4.1 million when we take out that $550,000 in reserve transfers, and we take out the $224,000 that you spent in capital assets, and then add in amortization. So the annual surplus on a consolidated basis for the municipality was $584,000. So that's how we get from the beginning of the year at 6.7 to the end of the year at 7.3. And then the next couple schedules basically present those same numbers in different ways. You have your consolidated statement of change in net assets and your cash flow, which is the same basis but net of changes in accounts payable and whatnot. The notes, you have your significant accounting policies, how you recognize revenue, what you recognize as cash and cash equivalents, what we talk about with segmented information. These haven't changed from the prior year, so I'm not going to go into a great amount of detail. Note number 2, which is at the top of page 8. If you want to flip to that one. This is where all the cash we talked about on the statement of financial position. You had $3.7 million in cash. These are the buckets that it's in. So unrestricted general operating cash was only about $75,000 of that. So you have reserved the rest of it for different purposes. The general capital reserve, so that's your savings account for the future investments, is at $1.9 million. Your general operating reserve is at $127,000, so that can be used for unexpected or unbudgeted operating expenses. For instance, in some municipalities, if you have somebody who's retiring and you wanna hire somebody for 3 months to do the same job for training purposes, you could make a motion of council to bring that extra salary, unbudgeted salary expense out of the operating reserve, so that at the end of the day, it wouldn't create a deficit. So it's kind of a savings account for just general operating expenses. And then your gas tax funds, you have about $1.5 million in cash there, and then your general capital fund, which is kind of leftover cash from when you built the property, but it's also how you fund your capital purchases, was about $14,000. So when you make a motion to bring something out of reserves and spend it on capital, Terry then makes a bank transfer essentially from the general capital reserve into the general capital bank account and then makes the purchase. So this is a showing, I guess, of what was in the bank assigned for everything. The next note that I will talk about is your tangible capital assets, which is on page 11. So the first part of the table is the original cost that you've invested. So you have about $13 million in land, buildings, machinery and equipment, parks and playgrounds, trails, etc. We have expensed $5.9 million, and that's how we get to the $7.1 million of net book value at the end of the year. The next page talks about the sick leave accrual and the deferred revenue, so your gas tax funding that's been deferred. Note number 8, there's 2 debentures for your long-term debt. One is for a fire truck and the other one is for this building. And then you are in all short-term borrowing compliance, so we put a note in there to alert the province that you're in compliance.
So Rachel, it's for the fire department though.
Oh, the fire department,
For the
sorry.
fire hall.
Yeah. And then your reserve funds is note number 10, so this talks about the transfers in and out. So you earned interest on the general capital reserve of about $58,000 this year. On your general operating reserve, you earned interest of about $5,200. You transferred in $550,000 into your capital reserve at the end of the year, and then you transferred out $15,000 for the purchase of a capital asset. I think that was it the lawnmower? I can't remember exactly what it was, but
I think so.
I think
The
so.
zero turn.
the zero turn lawnmower.
Yeah, I think so.
So we disclosed to the province, we made the motions to take money out and to put money in, and then we get Terry to sign off on this page as well. And then the next couple of pages is just more segment disclosures for the province to get from the consolidated to the unconsolidated numbers. I don't want to bore you with too many numbers, because there's a lot of numbers.
Okay, anybody have any questions for Joe? Very well presented, no questions.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much.
It helps that the councillors around the table, a lot of you have been here for a couple of years. I think, Jared, you're the only one that's new to municipal financial statements. So they're a bit to wrap your head around as you go through.
Yeah, not new to a financial statement, but
The municipal ones are definitely a bit of a Pandora's,
yeah, a lot of pluses and minuses.
yeah.
All fun though.
But the province accounts does a little bit of their accounting a little differently, and we have to follow their rules.
Well, there's 3 different accounting frameworks that municipalities have to follow. The first one is your budget framework, your unconsolidated general operations, which is governed by the province. The second one is nationally CPA standards for public sector accounting bodies. We have a set of standards we have to adhere to. And then the province adds on to that a municipal financial reporting handbook that we have to follow for disclosures and notes. So there's kind of 3 different buckets that we have to look at and say, okay, how are we going to present these numbers? Which is why there's so many notes that say the same thing in a different fashion, because there's different frameworks that we have to follow when we're putting the statements together.
Nice. Sherry. Thanks, Joe.
I know I'm pleased with $1,000.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
On a multi-million dollar budget.
Cutting it pretty close, yeah.
Yeah.
$4+ million budget, you cut it to 1,000, holy cow.
Not too
There's
bad.
a lot of businesses and family households that could take some of your.
Yeah, you can win that when you retire.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, if there's no
How's that
questions,
pension?
if there's no
That's
questions,
governed by the province, so, yeah.
if there's no questions for Jill, I'll ask for a motion to approve.
I, Councillor Holt, move to approve the audited consolidated financial statements as presented by the auditor Jill Stairs from KPMG LLP for the year ending December 31st, 2024.
Can I have a seconder?
I, Councillor Fox, second.
Any questions, comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. Thank you, council, and thank you, Jill.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Appreciate you coming out in the evening like this.
Yes. Terry, I need your signature on one thing.
Okay, I have a red pen, could I just borrow a
Really,
pen?
she wants your autograph.
It's just the ref letter that says, up until this point in time, all
Here.
of these numbers are
There you
still the same.
Oh, I thought you wanted a red one.
No, I said that's all I have.
Oh, okay.
Red means debt, you're supposed to sign
Yeah.
black.
We're using blue.
Yeah,
Red be great.
Exactly. So I have physical packages that I can leave here, but I'm gonna send you guys electronic statements for signature, because I know you have to submit them electronically to the
Yes.
province, so I figured if I do an e-signature, it'd probably be easier for you than breaking apart a binded set of statements. Okay.
So, do you want to do this before your presentation? Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
All right, moving on, item 5, we have a presentation from Black Arcs Inc. on how traffic moves about. So I'm gonna turn things right over to them, they're gonna probably need our screen.
So I'm just gonna bring on, I'll facilitate a little bit of introductions here. And, I'll let you, okay, plug in, connected there. Ah, there you go, okay.
Do you want the podium so that you're up there?
Well, I think, so Mike Randall's gonna join, so Mike Randall will be here, but he's sick. But he can be here on the internet. So kind of, how does this fit? So a bit of an update.
He don't need a podium.
So I think that's, so I think Mike just needs to join.
Do you need the TV or no?
Yes, we will need the TV.
Why not for Mike?
But it looks like that's working too, so there we go. That's fine.
That's what we should be seeing.
Counselor Fox, just be careful because you're really
Yeah, that's
wrapped
what
around
you're
that
saying.
chair.
Wrapped around.
Yeah, don't wanna see a trip and fall and hurt yourself.
So that should be there.
He's got that plugged into his computer, so.
Just sound well.
Okay.
That's not my face.
He's joining.
Don't go back, Tim.
Tim, if you wanted to, you could always sit in the lead's chair.
Just tag it, Jake.
Well, I could do that. Maybe I'll do that.
Yeah, save getting tangled up.
That's true. I'll come back.
I'll be back.
So,
Wow.
Yeah.
we're, oh, awesome, everybody can see that?
We need an 86-inch screen, is what we need.
At least a 75.
Is that bad?
Right there.
Yeah, I bet.
Maybe I'll get rolling.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
Mike might hopefully join us, but
do you want to sit here?
Yeah, okay.
I've seen it, so I can just stay.
No, you go
No,
sit. I'm
you
gonna
go.
sit. I'll sit over here, I can see it.
I really appreciate your worship and councillors having us today. We had a few of you the other week see this, some of the things that we've been doing as a group. My name is Chris Mathis. I'm with Portfolio. Portfolio Solutions Group has been a long time strategic consulting company. I'm based here in the Fredericton area. Mike Randall, who hopefully will be able to join us, is based in the Moncton office. And then we have Jake Arsenault, that's him joining. Jake Arsenault and Dane Shepard from the Black Arts team. I guess what I wanted to just convey before I give much better people to talk is that Mike has been doing engagement and working with municipalities and companies and organizations for a long time. We're big proponents on engagement, solid public engagement or engagement depending on the nature of the work, and putting solid strategies together that are actually actionable. And as we've been developing a relationship with Black Arts, we feel that this is really a key component to doing efficient and effective engagement, getting solid voice from your constituencies on whatever the question is or the issue is that you are facing. And so we're absolutely excited by this. We have several projects in the works. So I'm going to turn it over to Mike to just touch on engagement and some of the municipal experience. And then Jake and Dane will show the really cool stuff. Okay? Sound good?
Good evening, Your Worship and Council and staff. Sorry I couldn't be there with you. I am under the weather a little bit, and as my mother always said, I have a great voice, a great face for radio, so not missing much at this end. But it's a real pleasure, and as Chris said, we've been working with municipalities across the province for a long time and understand how important engaging citizens and engagement is more than just listening to citizens. It's also a two-way conversation about how important municipalities are in their day-to-day lives. And I think so many citizens in New Brunswick take that for granted. They don't understand the complexities of municipal government. They don't understand all the decisions that you folks have to make on their behalf on a weekly basis. And so engagement allows people to talk about the community that they want to live in, and for the rural community of Hanwell, that's clearly being close to nature and continuing that rural way of life. But it's more than that. It's about how do we incorporate progress that people also want into that quality of life? How do we ensure that we keep taxes low but provide the services that people are looking for? And we have those real meaningful conversations with folks to get them to better understand that it's a bit of a give and take, that we have to make tough decisions sometimes, but we're always doing it in the best interest of citizens. And the work we've done with some of your neighboring municipalities, we've worked in areas around immigration for municipalities. We've worked with some of the regional service commissions on the development of their new strategic plans. We've worked with the Union of Municipalities on the development of their provincial election campaign. Before that, the cities of New Brunswick on multiple things, but it was always driven by talking to citizens, understanding what their dreams and aspirations for their community was, and then working with mayors and councils like yourselves, elected officials, to ensure that they're making the best decisions, informed decisions, and that you're able to then deliver on those opportunities to your citizens and deliver it in a way that is meaningful, but affordable, and sustainable. So that's the kind of approach we take to citizen engagement, and it helps you then use technology that our friends at Black Arts are about to show you, and in an informed way, and use it as part of that engagement. And we can really show now citizens what opportunity can look like, what decision-making may have an impact on their lives. And this is changing the way we can engage. It's changing the way we have these conversations. We're super excited about it, and we would love to work with you in helping to drive some of your opportunities. So I'll turn it back to Chris and Jake and Dane.
to show the premise, so real quick. You're gonna have more questions and answers after my demo, and then Dane's next. He'll do interactive demos, and then you can pummel him with questions, and it can be pretty much interactive. So I'm just gonna do a real quick, high level, and then we'll switch to do some more like local communities. So this is a demo that showed really well at the World Smart Cities Expo in Barcelona. This is showing a smart cities. This is a U.S. Peachtree Corners. We were in the U.S. pavilion because we're showing off a smart city in the States. But what was nice is that they have all the sensors. So this is great validation for us to check that our engine is doing what it should do in a smart city with all the different sensors and whatnot. And CitySketch is built as a community planning toolkit. So really it's built as a what-if machine, so that you can make changes digitally, run it, and see what happens, and do an analysis. Instead of taking months to do, the analysis can be done real time in the meeting. And it's just as high quality as what a consultant would produce when they're running the numbers. We make running the numbers pretty easy. So the what if in this demo was Peachtree Corners. They're putting in some housing, apartment buildings. They're also creating a new facility that creates about 1,000 jobs, and then some active mobility options. So how does all those elements fit together to shape traffic? So we can do all kinds of different things, but in this case it was understanding how to create traffic. So here's how this thing works. So it's a model of the community. It's called the digital twin. We focus more on the community and impacts of decisions. So we can pull in what's the road speed, what's a transit route, what's the type of building, what's the use of it, what's a home. So we know the layout of where things happen and where people are. The heart of it are these little yellow dots. We'll make a set of synthetic families. So this is the approach used to model big cities when they do their transportation modeling for a big city. We're using the same approach. It's called agent-based modeling. So this is the most advanced form of transportation modeling, and is prohibitively expensive for, say, any city in New Brunswick. They're not going to do it. Toronto has a model. Montreal's starting to have a model for transit modeling, and usually they're very expensive, and it's just numbers go in, numbers come out. So we took that same approach and made it attractive, interactive, and practical. So this can fit within your price point. Under the hood, it's the real analysis. But it's a more powerful tool than what traffic engineers think, because it can be used to understand community impacts. So how this thing works is that we'll make a set of synthetic families that's representative of the community, down to shared vehicles. And it's what's called an activity-based model. So for whatever profile, like youth, well, what do they need to do? They go to school. Working age adults, here's a probable income, probably this type of work, match it with a similar employer. So one thing that would fall out of our model is like the lineup at Timmy's falls out of the model. Like it's emergent. So if I click on this agent schedule, they have a full plausible schedule, right? So that's how these big systems work. We made it very visual and engaging, so you can use that type of modeling for rapid planning and engagement. All right, so let me show you some things. So what I can do is I can hit go, and you're going to watch a plausible day in the life of this community. Red is work. So down at the bottom shows predicted mobility by intent. Red is work. So red, you see that little blue spike at the bottom? That's that early morning work folks going, the first ones to the office. Blue is school. You see that long tail? Those are school buses. That's what it takes for the time for the school buses to snake around, pick up the children, go to work. Red here, this red spike, that is work spike. And then you see that blue spike, so that's dropping kids off on the secondary trip. And then yellow is discretionary time. Speed it up a bit. So this is a plausible day in the life of a plausible set of families that represents the entirety of the town of Peachtree Corners, Georgia, USA. So lots of things we can do with it. When I speed it up, you're going to see little blue snakes. So those are the school buses going around, picking up the kids going to school. All kinds of different metrics we can do. There's a lot of potential. So one would be, say, vehicle emissions. What does that look like? We can pull up different travel webs. So what's interesting is that we put these counters, digital counters, at the same location as where the sensors are in Peachtree Corners. and we're getting a 94% representation of traffic. So just think about it. So we're taking the layout, we're taking census data, and we're reducing traffic. So that means that this is the what-if machine. So what we can do is we can change it, move housing here, add some roads, and you can see the impact of those changes in real time running the model. So it's a what-if machine. We can show the impact, show the changes. That's how this tool works. One example would be what's the net vehicle greenhouse gas emissions, right? Which was the same thing as time spent in vehicles, things like that. So there's all kinds of metrics we can do. So I'll maybe stop there for questions, and then we'll switch, and then Dane will run some local communities, and we'll do some interactive, real-time changes and see what happens.
Looks like City Skylines or Sim City basically, just pulling out the.
You got it. We use some inspiration there for sure.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
So,
Takes me back to Pac-Man.
and again, the younger demographic, that's designed, it's a bit of a lo-fi. Like it plays well with a younger demographic with the dark mode. So a lot of effort went into that we can hold people's attention. So here's a picture doing pop-up engagement. This was Sackville. This is beta pilot in the Moncton area. Show up with a touchscreen. If you give a model to a community member of where they live, they go nuts. And the other piece is they'll play with it and they go, I never thought about it, like, oh, there's more to this, huh? And they'll have an aha moment. And then, okay, now that you know there's a trade-off, what do you want now that you know the realities of it? So at the Sackville Market, we just showed up, no advertisement, and like we were mobbed all day. So in terms of engagement, we did 2 Saturdays, and we conducted more surveys than what the local service district could do with a budget, 6 months, open houses in the paper. Just show up 2 Saturdays and we get more surveys, and I would say they're much higher quality because people interact with the issues, they know the trade-off, right? And then, well, what do you think now that you actually understand the principles that will affect the design? Because there's always a trade-off, right?
Just a question, did you have, were you able to see like consistency in the input? Like what the community members that showed up saw this, and all of the data that they were, requesting, looking for, was there consistency in it?
I'd say this would be, in Georgia is like a big version of New Brunswick in a lot of ways. It's just bigger scale. They tend to like a low density build pattern. I'd say a lot of professional staff, their view is we just want to sell viable options that people aren't used to, and that community's asking for something they're familiar with, but it's actually financially crazy. So can we show that, okay, that's just going to bleed money and make traffic, that's going to not bleed money and traffic's reasonable. We can show these options, but it's a different development pattern. So it's really tough to show a different development pattern that makes sense if it's not familiar to folks. So you can show the implications of it. You could maybe do a scenario that's like, that shows like this design causes problems. Look at this problem. We don't want that, do we?
I can jump in a bit there, Jake.
Okay.
So that lineup that you're looking at there, a lot of those conversations, people were coming in and they were saying, so the conversation was about school placement and how that affects movement. Around the community. And because they were planning an upcoming school, so the people talking to us were coming in and they were saying, well, this is convenient for me. Let's run the numbers on that. And that's what really got them thinking and saying, well, maybe convenient for me is actually inconvenient for a lot of other people. So let me think about that a little bit. That was the part they hadn't really thought about before, because you don't have the perspective for that unless you're looking at it from a zoomed out view a little bit.
Sure. So I'm going to pull up Florenceville Bristol, is that the one? Yeah. So we'll switch. So this can be more interactive. So Jane's going to do some real-time sketching.
So this is a recent project we did, Florenceville Bristol, and the question we were asking here was, how does different future growth patterns and having that old bridge open or closed affect economic activity in the downtown area? So we can set up, it's a light economic activity model. Hold on. Oh, I clicked the wrong thing, my mistake. scenario, Jake?
Maybe just switch to Sackville if you want
Yeah,
to
okay.
do something else. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm a version behind on my machine.
Okay, we'll go to Sackville. Just to show you how we modeled out the different changes. So Sackville, New Brunswick, and we have tools in place to say, apologies, this is Jake's computer, and I say this every time, but I'm really bad at the Mac trackpad. But I'll get there.
It's backwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's east to west, so it's actually from point down as I go looking at it, yeah. Like the map is accurate, looking down here.
Right, yeah. Yeah, and that's something we can rotate things. Jake, are you on your local version?
Yeah, it's a local version.
Oh, okay.
You just go to the website if you want.
Yeah, I'll keep rolling for the interest of time. I don't want to waste anybody's time here. We can
Just
still
show
show the
the
same
change.
stuff. Yeah. So just to show you, if we're building a new subdivision here, we build out a few roads. I think your battery ran out.
There's no way to run it.
Or your, oh wow.
Oh, no.
Yeah, let's go to the .com.
They're actually building a co-op out,
I have never had
just
that
outside
side.
of Sackville, Burn Sackville.
Your computer's done for the day.
Yeah.
You didn't pay him overtime? He's not.
Sackville, I can see my son's house from here.
He lives in Sackville.
You know, your computer usually holds up pretty
Yeah.
well. but-
Where's the university?
Yeah, there we go.
That should be good.
A lot of weird stuff happens.
Yeah, it's
Always the live demo.
just too.
Bad electricity.
And now we have this guy.
So this is a newer version. So before I was on my laptop, so now he's getting it from the internet.
The web.
Okay.
Yeah. You're several months out of date now, Jake. We'll have to get you updated. Okay, so this is the one I was going to show originally. So we set up, okay, this is our economic activity area of interest. We set up for a consumer activity in this area. Let's just give an estimated revenue. And then what about advertising dollars? We can make an estimate of that. And then we can run the numbers. So what I'll do here is, rather than just saying current day and we get some numbers, what I'll do is I'll put in a new subdivision. There's a lot of people for Florensville, Bristol. This is probably maybe bigger than I should have made it, but that's okay.
Be a big expansion
It's
of
a hope.
Canes or something.
Yeah.
Or Costco.
So, yeah, but a bunch of canes and
Yes.
things coming in.
That's what it is.
How do I do wheel again?
Do what?
A mouse wheel? Is it two fingers?
2 fingers, yeah. Yes.
Oh. Yeah, I don't know. I was gonna try to rotate it, it doesn't matter.
Next time you bring your laptop.
So I'll start bringing those for you.
I'll just
I think the
practice
the
it.
trackpad's
It
pretty.
took me a full week to adjust PC to Mac. It's like,
So the blue lines are roads?
So the blue ones are the new ones I'm putting in. The gray ones here are the pre-existing. So this is, I just put in all these new ones as part of this pretty big expansion to Florenceville. And this is the only road they have to get into the area.
Lovely.
Well, I play Skyline, City Skylines enough to know what's gonna happen there. I thought we got backed up pretty bad.
Need a roundabout.
Now, I didn't add jobs, so a lot of these people actually won't be on a 9-to-5 schedule.
Oh, yeah.
But that's something we can do. We can say, these people are gonna work at this
we need
location.
shift workers in this subdivision.
We can model all around.
Yeah.
No, for real.
And now it's crunching the numbers, it's going through every one of these agents, including the ones I added. Where are they gonna work, where are they gonna go to school?
There's a graph.
And there's your daily activity schedule. And we can see them, they are coming in. It's not too much of a jam.
I'm also unemployed.
They're all,
They're all employed.
Where are they going?
Tim Martin.
And might be going, this is downtown Forestville,
Yeah.
couple restaurants there.
Curling club.
Grocery store.
Yeah,
But you see
downtown.
that whole neighborhood, the road works and all those aspects, right? Those are just quickly able to be sketched out. As a council, you may have 2 or 3 things in mind, and each one of those would normally or traditionally have been a very specific study asked of an engineering firm. Well, now you can pre-develop what it is that you actually need them to look and do. Having gone through what you see as your most engaging ideas that accommodate a number of different things that your stakeholders, you already have inherently understood, right? And then you have a group that can then engage, roll out that strategy, make sure it all makes sense. The tool is then backing it up. And now what you have is a much more efficient and effective way of getting the actual engineering works or whatever it may be. That's the question.
You have the fundamentals worked out in advance, in terms of.
Mary would kill us if we let you have a copy of this at home.
I already have 4 versions of SimCity and 2 versions of City Skyline. I was a beta tester actually for Skyline.
Well, you need a beta test city sketch.
I haven't played the new
I
one
would,
yet.
I would love to, I didn't play it. I would love to, have you a beta tester for this.
We can let you play Pandemic.
Yeah, we got a pandemic ball as well.
I've had that for a while.
Defense grade.
He's played that one.
So the approach here would allow, once the area is digitized, you then have a baseline, you can start to work on different questions. So your first question might be the traffic related issue to consider and the growth. You may have land use planning opportunities that you want to figure out. The industrial park needs to be considered. What are the issues related to that? What's the water and the sewer and other related aspects that have to be considered? Now, a lot of those different aspects of modeling are then able to be in there, ready to go, and figure out what your best path, what your preferred path would be. Before you actually go to engaging the public, you've got some credible scenarios that you can be putting forward and engaging them on.
So impressive.
What I just did here was kind of got a fresh start, the same baseline Forestville, and rather than building a new subdivision, I took out the sports center that's in the downtown area, because there's a fairly sizable sports center that's down there that gets a fair bit of use. And then you can see the effect. You can kind of go back in time and say, what was the effect of building this here versus somewhere else? What if we built it somewhere else? How would that change things? And that lets you compare just across your options. We also have, there's a lot of different KPIs we can pull out of here. So this is kind of a napkin, this is a light economic activity model, just to show you. We could look at, so what's the total revenue based on our number, or estimated revenue per transaction we put in there, how many transactions were there in our target area. We can also look at, what was the time lost due to traffic, how does that change for different scenarios, all sorts of different metrics we can pull out.
It's pretty slick.
Thank you.
When you talk about a transaction, what, can you dive into that? Like what are you calling a transaction?
So a transaction here is a leisure activity for one of our agents who goes to a commercially zoned building, basically. And we can set it up so that, so if you want to go get a coffee, here are your viable options for choices. And then they optimize based off of their daily travel. They're more or less trying to drive as little as possible to have a more convenient day. So a transaction is they go to the coffee shop for a socializing activity or something like that. And then we'll say, okay, that's one transaction. They'll spend X amount of dollars. And the economic model is really quite lightweight at this point. This was the first real venture into it, but the system is built to integrate other models. So we're in some talks with some folks in Savannah who might be partnering up with us to take their really heavy-duty economic model, and we set it up so they talk to each other. And we say, okay, here's your design scenario that you do, here's your set of activities, let's pass it to their heavy-duty economic model, and then we bring it back here to visualize it.
What about Georgia Tech? Is Georgia Tech's involved in similar projects down there? They do economic analysis.
We were thinking along the line of the problem down there now at Green, Irving, and the 640. So currently, there's a set of traffic lights at the Irving. So is it possible to capture it now and then give an idea of what it would look like if the traffic lights were moved up to say green and 640?
Yeah, we can do different road layouts for sure.
Because that's the kind of thing, what we're thinking of anyway, is to basically have a model that we can present to DTI and say, this is what's going on now. This is a possible solution by moving the traffic lights, but maybe there's another alternative solution that we haven't even thought of yet.
If you want to increase the drama, what you could do is you build out your growth plan. So let's build this out 5 years out.
Yes.
And then you go, here's what it's going to look like if we don't do something.
That's right. So you can have like a now with the stoplights where they are, and a now with the stoplights moved, and 5 years down the road with the stoplights where they are and the stoplights where they're, if they're removed.
Yes.
That would be an interesting scenario to work on to see just how that all gels together.
Well, and it's fairly easy to use, so you could also, like, you could add a roundabout, you could add ramps, like, you could do those things,
Yeah,
right? And see what the different scenarios are and how that impacts things, right?
That's right. So the, one of the questions we were looking at here was, what if we build a new bridge across?
Mhm.
And you got a new bridge. That's
Ta-da.
it. So it's that easy
Right.
to noodle around stuff.
Exactly. So I have another question. So my little brain's going here, and I'm thinking about like economic development, right? So when you mentioned the coffee shops, so I'm thinking to myself, so would it be possible, if you're like, okay, so what do people go to the city for right now? How could we make it more efficient if people remained here and used various businesses here? So what if we recruited XYZ type of company here? How would that impact how people may travel and get around and whether they would be here more or spend more here?
The tool is built specifically, one of the reasons to build it was actually based on a book called Jane Jacobs' Life and Death of Great American Cities. It was those premises working out to create the interface. And I think the principles we're trying to show is, what does density do, right? What does that mean? We can help you understand the value of mixed of age building or building type, so mixed use. And one of the things that was actually important in one of the premises is like short blocks. Why short blocks? But really it creates more access, right? Because you can punch through a block. So how do you show that? So this is a way that we can show if you change accessibility, so like say you punch through super blocks, transit options, and then if you're clever about your mixed use of amenity placement, like we can show how that would reduce demand for driving. Like it's built, we literally model day in the life, what are you going to do, what are the activities you do, and if you make that activity more convenient for that profile, where they can walk and get it, they'll do it, and we'll literally show how that would decrease like traffic by better layout. Like it's built to do that.
And then show the growth of 5, 10, 20 years.
Right.
So you're considering that even as you're trying to create all that mixed opportunity.
Yeah. So you can look at those details, the amenity placement, the profile, the demographic profile. You can noodle all of that easily.
It's huge for investment. I mean, from a business standpoint, you have this data, you present it to the investment, and there's a go, no go more easily because you can say, look, I think about the Crossroads, for instance, and I know that, when that building was first constructed, there was an intent, so that in the future there was going to be either a Tim Hortons or there was going to be, franchise for the left side. It never materialized. And actually they're losing services because of, traffic flow and that sort of thing. So it's huge when you've got business trying to move into an area. This is a real interesting way to court investment.
Yes.
Here's our data. We can show you how this works, and we're interested in what this means. So it's like, I think it feels like we're scratching at the surface with so much more depth that no one realized.
Yeah.
I mean, you can also add, I remember when we had our meeting, I was mentioning that the study's been done of the people, how many people come to the industrial park to work but don't live in Hamilton. So you could look at, where you would put housing, the people who live there.
No need to leave, just stay.
Just stay.
That's
And, and it also says how many are leaving and you have all that stuff that, that data that you can put in. And,
If we can connect those wires and say,
Yeah.
people who live here will work over here, and
Yeah.
kind of force it rather than letting the all decide.
Mm.
Yeah, game out.
So animate the plans you have now and then add
Yeah.
on to it.
oh yeah, there's so many things you can do.
And also,
And-
oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, no, the other thing I was thinking of is just because of our layout, and the fact that our industrial park is getting foolish, and, you know, so we think of, would we have housing around there? But also, where would we, if we wanted to have more, another industrial area, where would we put it? And we have ideas, of course, but just because of the way the highways run and that sort of thing, but, you know, there's different things that you could look into where might be the next places to go, and where to
Absolutely.
Yeah.
really try
We
and
should be able to do
develop.
all of that with the storage tank.
Oh, yeah, no, the possibilities are endless.
And great for developers that they could come in and say, okay, I'd like to do single-family home subdivision. Well, let's look at doing apartments or
We got that
whatever,
one here in
right?
attendance
So
tonight.
Yeah.
you could have that extra and be able to show
I think that's Mike trying to get in.
the difference.
We're not done yet.
I like the idea of looking at the projected development, projected growth and all of that stuff. I think that's great.
Yeah. Yeah, I love this.
Yeah.
Me too.
So at our meeting council that we had with these guys last week, I was telling them that we had just were approved for those projects for the land identification and the water. So they said that we could layer these within this model as well. So all of our plans could kind of come together, our zoning, our rural plans, everything, and we could have it all so that we could use it, so.
Yeah, the approach we see is digitize the area, get all of the knowns that already exist. That sets you up, and then you can start to address your aspirational biggest question. Call that a phase, 6 months. Depending on the nature of how much engagement's required, then that's essentially like a package. But now you're in a position that now you can start looking at, okay, what are the next things that you want to address? The traffic and progressing the growth around the traffic sounded like the first thing, or that was what started the relation opportunity. But then you have the industrial park, then you have some other considerations. Maybe you want to look at the housing side. Housing's a big deal here in New Brunswick. And you still want your services to be readily accessed by folks. And I like the point about trying to attract people and more people to stay and engage through the local community, right?
The amenities and services that people have really need locally, keep more of those dollars.
So you guys develop this yourselves in-house?
Yes. So my background is I'm a deep tech entrepreneur. That's what I do as a career choice. This is my second venture. First one was actually, I did a PhD, and we created a CAT scan for infrastructure. It's a one-sided CAT scan technology. Looks in the walls. That venture is growing in Georgia, hence spending time in Georgia and Louisiana. The market that we found for that technology is actually roadway culverts. So helping manage roadway culverts, because we inspect them, it's going to save tons of infrastructure dollars. And then Dane's back, so I got into taking applied university know-how to make a tool. And then there might be 5 or 6 primary research projects at UNB in sequence to work out the fundamentals to make this. And then the big sponsor to actually create the tool is part of National Defense. They were a sponsor for some security applications, pandemic modeling. That's what really built the engine. And then Dane's background was designing and building plasma reactors for nanotech research. And well, I guess you got that bit about how that relates to.
Sure, yeah. So building plasma reactors, so you're putting a whole lot of current into a small space to try to make nanomaterials. But you gotta be careful, because if you don't, you got grad students who are reaching for live wires with one hand and a piece of metal with the other hand. That is literally a thing that happened, and I would have to say, don't do that, you'll die.
No, they can vaporize.
Immediately.
Like vapor.
And part of that process is, part of building that stuff is modeling how do your really hot gases, 10,000 degrees, move around in this really volatile environment. And there's a lot of transferable skills to go from that type of analysis to this type of analysis. Because people are very complicated. I'd argue more complicated.
So it's you're basically your own unique engine for this. You didn't take this from anybody else.
We built this engine.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's
The
very impressive,
transportation.
guys.
Thank you. the transportation model itself is 20 years of research out of the University of Toronto. So we didn't come up with that, but we've done an implementation and
Your own
Kenny.
Yeah, it's very impressive.
And what's crazy, if you're into technology at all, is that that model runs in the web page. So it's a JavaScript transportation model. So the heavy number crunching happens on the web page, which is built for if, like, say, a lot of citizens were playing with it, and you get into thousands, it doesn't change our pricing or costs. So there could be 1,000 citizens playing with it. I might be overpromising a bit, but the hosting side is manageable because a lot of the other solutions, there's no, like, the smart city stuff is pretty expensive, pretty sophisticated. They could not do those concurrent users. Like, it's just. So the way this is built, it's not just that Dane made a real engine like City Skylines, but it's also rubs in a web page to keep the cost affordable for local government, right? So we really made it hard to get a tool that can fit in your price point.
That is
That's our
incredible.
goal. Get that price that it can fit within their toolkit to serve you. And there's nobody else is building for you guys like we are, just saying. Although we're getting traction in the bigs like Barcelona and the States, so it's moving.
Well, we are up and coming.
Yeah, we're getting there.
You know, and it's really interesting, if you spend any time in a city like Barcelona, you're at an intersection and you literally can walk to a pharmacist, 5 restaurants.
Yeah.
Like, it's incredible, but that's also a massive density compared to, and they haven't had the land that we've been able to continue to expand on, right?
If I'm in Barcelona, there's only 3 places I will be. Okay? 1 at the beach,
Yes.
2 at the bullfight, and 3 at the water.
So you got all planned out.
I've been there. Unfortunately, I was too young to go to the water bowl.
So, these guys would have super fun showing you all sorts of things, but we have used a lot of your time tonight. But if there's other questions, we're planning to put forward a package, and it can be as an approach that has some interaction if you so desire, and that would be awesome, because we want to make sure that this works. And we think there's a lot of opportunity for this, so, you know, we're looking forward to working with you folks.
Thanks a lot for the presentation, guys.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, we appreciate it.
Certainly interesting.
And
for
next
sure.
time we'll have the demo type.
It's still pretty good. It worked out, yeah.
Are we going to use a Mac or?
Bring your Windows PC next time.
You can pick.
It's just the battery.
Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
We really
Very
appreciate it.
Very good.
Thanks so much for that.
Okay, moving on to item 6, business arising, 6A, land for public purposes, Tranquil Valley Estates subdivision. If you guys remember, this is what we tabled from our last council meeting.
Thanks so much.
So we're looking at this tonight, possibility of 3 different scenarios. One is to rescind the motion from October 2024 and charge 0. Another is a motion to change the amount from the original motion from either $1,000 to $3,000 a lot, as Mr. Bill suggested, or we basically go with what we had before. Anyway, I'm going to pass this over to our CAO because she has some information that she wants to present on behalf of Mr. Bill. And then we'll move on to discussion, and we'll move on to get some feedback around the table of what each councillor sees, what their choice would be, what they feel should go.
Okay, council, so as we stated, this was tabled from our meeting on March the 19th. So I had given you the letter from the developer, but because it was back in October, you guys couldn't really remember exactly what the lot was. So in your package, in the staff report that I've provided to you, it was the original package that we had from October of 2024. So this property that we are speaking of this evening is just for the one lot. So I had in the developer's letter, he had stated about a subdivision with other lots. That is not to come into play tonight. this subdivision won't be ready for a while, so he will address council at a later time when that is ready. So, because this was a special meeting of council, I had informed them that it is set up a little bit different than a regular council meeting, and therefore they are really not supposed to have any public speaking. So they just wanted me to share with you, they feel that they have brought a lot of tax-paying dollars into our community that without them, we wouldn't have had that. So they currently have 25 homes in these 3 or 4 streets or whatever that they own in this subdivision. And just for the road and stuff alone, it was for the power alone, it was $100,000 that they had to put in. And that doesn't include the cost of developing the roads and stuff. So they feel that they have given to council, and they would request that we give them either a reduced rate. So at the October motion, or at the October meeting, the motion was to propose a fee for $3,832.01. That is the 8% value of the property. And they have asked to either rescind that motion, take into the consideration the costs, the revenue that we have received from the property taxes, and either rescind it or at least give them the opportunity to have a reduced rate. So.
You good? Okay, so everybody's had an opportunity to review the information, so I'm just gonna start and go around the table. I'll start with Councillor Dooley to see what his thoughts are, and I'll move on to Councillor McKenzie and come around the table. And then we can decide where to go for the vote. We'll have a motion and a vote.
I would say that, based on, the investment over time and, what it's done to the economics of the area for us in regards to taxes and whatnot, that I would rescind altogether. That's what I think
Okay.
at this point.
Councillor McKenzie.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the agreement as well, that I don't really see a point of charging for the one lot with this. What would be more interesting will be eventually in the future, if this is subdivided in that area for 12, to see what happens there. You already know my feelings on that, I think. But just as a point of information too, the chair could request that the developer that's present speak if the chair chooses. And that's all for me, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Glaive.
I agree. I think the work that we're doing currently on bylaw work kind of goes against the charge at this point. Like, I think we're working to make it a little bit more fair and equal, and I think some of the discussion we've had, were that on the table right now, this wouldn't apply, so I would rescind.
Okay, Councillor Holt.
The key is that we're working on a bylaw that's going to be covering this, and we're trying to get it
Tighten.
tightened, okay? I was all for the 8% because that's essentially what the standard is around the province. But in this one specific instance, I have no problem rescinding it. I understand where they're coming from, okay? They have in turn generated tax revenue for us, and we've got to work with our developers. So until such time as we say something really hard and concrete, I've got no problem rescinding this, and somebody can table something else.
Okay, Councillor Fox.
Yeah, it sounds like we're all singing from the same song sheet here, so, I'm in the same boat here. Primarily because I know that we're working on something else, and once we get that in place, then I think we're good to go. We had some discussion previously, and I'm in favor of a few, at least a few lots that you can do before we before it breaks into a charge, that may come or not come, but at this stage, I'm good with rescinding.
Councillor Heisler?
Okay, so I went back because I felt like there was some confusion about this. So I went back and listened to our audio from the last time. And then I actually called our clerk for clarification because in the motion, we talk about the value of per each proposed lot. So for me, it was that we were doing more than one lot that at the time. But then I went back and looked at it and it was just for the one lot. So since we don't have a consistent policy and we're working on a consistent policy, I think that was the general discussion, was that we really need a consistent policy and that, you know, this is a very common practice, is the 8% in land for public purposes. Anyway, in this particular instance, because we don't have the consistent policy, I'm fine with rescinding it as it's just one lot being developed. So I'm fine with that.
And last but not least, Deputy Mayor Jonah.
We know what I'm gonna say.
Good, let's move on.
No, of course, I believe that even, especially with this lot, but I mean, even going forward, I think that Hanwell is in a position where we need development. And, you know, by having this policy, whether, you know, we'll fight through that later. But, yeah, I agree that we need development. These lots that are being created, no matter who's creating them, are far, you know, the expense and everything with building these days, and the economic conditions for people. We want housing that's, you know, as cost effective as we can get for seniors and for young people, and every little bit helps. And so I'm certainly, land for public purposes is not my favorite thing. And so I completely agree with rescinding this one for sure.
Okay, so I think we've got a consensus around the table. Councillor McKenzie?
There's just one informational thing in here. Since in the past, the Regional Service Commission has told us that
They're gonna have a hard time.
since it's in our bylaw that have to have something of it, we can't just rescind the motion, they still have to be given direction for it.
Right.
So my recommendation with that would be to basically, since we basically want to, it seems to be $0 to rescind the motion, it'd be better just to make the,
Collect zero.
collect zero.
Collect zero.
That way, Regional Service Commission has a direction on where to go with it based on our bylaw.
Okay. And just to clarify, for clarification, we were talking policy, but this is an actual subdivision bylaw. So it's not a policy. It's going to be an actual bylaw, and that's written in our bylaw.
That's right, bylaw. By saying policy,
Just
not bylaw.
just to clarify that. So, I guess we'll need a motion. So I'll call on Councillor McKenzie.
Yes, whereas our subdivision bylaw number 08/2015 states that the land for public purposes can be up to 8% of the value of the property, and whereas motion 07-10-2024 directed Tranquil Valley Estates subdivision to pay 8% value resulting in a $3,832.01 fee, and whereas the developer has offered to pay $1,000 to $3,000 per lot instead of 8%, I, Councillor McKenzie, move that the Rural Community Handwell request land for public purposes fee of $0 in the Tranquil Valley Estates subdivision instead of the 8% value as per motion 07-10-2024 for this particular lot only.
Councillor Holmes.
Okay, so motion's been moved and seconded. Any questions, comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you very much.
So council, I would also like for you to rescind
We
that
still need to
motion.
rescind it too, yeah, but,
So, if you'd like to do the,
want me to do that too?
Might as well, while you're up.
Okay, whereas Tranquil Valley Estate subdivision was required to pay a land for public purposes fee in the amount of $3,830.01 motion 07-10-20, oh my God, 07-10-2024, and whereas the same council meeting on October 16, 2024, two other subdivisions were not required to contribute the 8% land for public purposes fee, I, Councillor McKenzie, move to rescind motion 07-10-2024.
Thank you, Councillor McKenzie. And one last motion we want to,
I, Councillor Highslip, second.
any questions, comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried, and one last bit in there is we need to accept the letter from Mr. Bill of Tranquil Valley Estates.
I, Councillor Ducleva, accept the letter dated March 19th from the developer of Tranquil Valley Estate subdivision as presented.
I, Councillor Dooley, second.
Okay, any questions, comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried, thank you, we're good. So, I hope our guests enjoyed this part of council, I'm sure they have. If you guys are interested, you can certainly stay for the remainder of council meeting, we have a couple of other big.
In the future, there, what are we gonna do then?
We're looking at,
8% or what?
we're looking at redoing that bylaw right now, it's under review, because there's things in there that depending on which way council goes, it's not quite fair. So we wanna have a bylaw that we can interpret by ourselves and interpret for the public, that they'll know exactly what it's going to be. So there's no guesswork in there like this, like a 0 to 8%. How do we fall on that if we don't take one or the other?
Right.
So this new bylaw is gonna make it very clear.
Because Dean Goodine, he's already in process of building one on Smith Road, right? And then I'll be continuing the one that I got across the road from home. I mean, we're trying to make Hanwell bigger instead of smaller.
Right. No, we'll certainly take that under review, and we'll also, it's imperative to get this bylaw straightened out and
And
check
other
it.
communities like Harvey, McAdam, St. Stephen, they never heard tell of this.
Okay. So, moving on, you guys can either stay and enjoy the rest of our council meeting, or,
Thank you, everybody.
No, thank you very much, y'all.
Yeah.
Thanks.
We'll keep in touch, y'all.
all right, thank you very much. Okay, moving on to, item B is the fire truck municipal capital and borrowing board debenture addition to the agenda. So I'm gonna turn this over to our CAO.
So, council, I had to add this as an addition. We did not think that our fire truck was going to be ready. Debentures, they call for debentures from the Municipal Capital Borrowing Board only twice a year. We received a letter stating that they would seek debentures. However, we had to reply to them by, I believe it was the 16th of April, and I didn't think that we would have our fire truck in time, so I didn't add it to the agenda. Today, our fire department, or actually yesterday, they went and reviewed all the deficiencies. There was only minor things, so our fire truck actually drove by us tonight, so it is here. It has to go to Moncton for the MVIs and stuff, but they will deliver it to us on the weekend, so I have to pay for the truck on the weekend, so I had to bring this forward, so.
I thought it was like another year or something.
Yeah, no, so what's going to happen, I have set up interim financing with the Bank of Montreal. So when you do a debenture, it is usually, we probably won't get our money from the Municipal Capital Borrowing Board until probably like maybe late June, possibly July. So we will have to do interim financing through our bank for the time being, so. With that, I have provided you the invoice. So there was pre-construction changes, so there was a few items when we were going through that the fire department thought that it would be better layouts, like in the cab. They wanted different lights, sirens, different stuff like that. So those pre-construction changes came to $14,000. This is something that Chief Crow said that he would just put in his budget. So I didn't bring those to you. It is over my limit, but it was a budgeted item that we had already approved in our budget. So the total cost is there. So it is $1,167,115.84, and then the HST on there. So what we are actually going to borrow from the Municipal Capital Borrowing Board, on the long sheets that I provided to you, we are only going to borrow $1,033,000. The reason for that, the auditor just told us that we had the $200,000 deposit that we were gonna put towards the fire truck, so we were going to put that over into the reserves. And remember I had mentioned that it didn't, so that's still sitting in our bank account, so we're just going to put that as a $200,000 down payment.
Lump sum.
And then a portion of our HST we get back, so that is why it's actually comes in at $1,032,396, but with municipal capital borrowing board, we have to round up to $1,000, so that is what the motion is going to be. So I've provided you a couple of motions, so the first one, I'd just like for you to hopefully accept the invoice. You actually,
Well, having seen it drive by with its lights on and the smile on the guy's face driving it,
And it's now in hand.
it's kind of, yeah.
yeah.
Who told you to bring that back?
So you guys had already approved it before, but now that we actually have an invoice, I'd just like for you to accept the invoice. Then the second motion is the actual wording that I need to send to the Municipal Capital Borrowing Board for them to go and get a debenture for us. And then the third one, I'd like to have a motion for the auditor for next year, just saying that we're going to use the $200,000 from our capital fund as a down payment, so. I will say, I have received many pictures and many texts from our firemen. I told them that it was like little boys with an expensive toy, and one of them responded and said it was like fire truck Disney World. So they were all pretty excited. So
The adult version of Toys for Big Boys on Salisbury Road.
yeah, so.
When was the last new fire truck purchase?
Oh, not that long ago.
Oh,
Not new, not brand new.
Not brand new, no.
Brand new fire
But
truck.
the ladder
So
truck.
we
Ladder
got
truck
a
was
ladder
what,
truck.
4 years ago already?
Yeah, probably we bought that from the United States.
I suspect one of those places that makes fire trucks would be pretty monumental for people.
Well, they actually contacted me yesterday and they were like, Terry, we need a forestry truck. This is like forestry truck heaven up here, so. Anyway, as you know, we have.
We need this, and we need
So,
I want.
if there's any, I don't know if you have any questions before you want to move ahead, but.
No, we needed
It's-
it, we got it.
Yeah, it's been talked about for such a long time.
Yep.
It's finally been delivered. I think we best pay for it.
Yeah, and I think as soon as the nice weather comes, we've got to get some decals, different things on the truck that we should probably do a ribbon cutting ceremony at the fire hall,
Yeah, we'll
so.
get a bottle of champagne and christen it.
Christen it.
Yeah.
Is it going station?
Why waste the champagne?
Oh, we didn't say we're gonna pour it out. We're gonna drink it, then hit the bottle on it.
I think so.
I'm not sure.
Okay, any other questions and comments or whatnot? So we got 3 motions to carry on with. Can I have the first one, please?
I, Councillor Holt, move to accept the invoice dated March 25th, 2025 from Safety Source Fire for a 2025 Maxi Saver pumper/tanker in the amount of $1,167,115.84 plus HST totaling $1,342,183.22.
Yeah, can I have a seconder?
Leave a second, sorry.
Okay. Any questions, comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded? Okay, motion carried. Moving on to the next motion, please.
I, Councilor Mackenzie, move to be resolved that the treasurer and mayor be authorized to issue and sell to the New Brunswick Municipal Finance Corporation, a local government of Hanwell, Devonshire, in the principal amount of $1,033,000 on such terms and conditions as are recommended by the New Brunswick Municipal Finance Corporation, and be it resolved that the local government of Hanwell agree to issue post-dated checks payable to the New Brunswick Municipal Finance Corporation as and when they are requested in payment and interest charges on the above debenture.
Seconder.
Aye, Counselor Heisler, second.
Okay, questions, comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. Thank you, council. And the last motion.
I, Counselor, duly move to authorize and direct the CAO treasurer to use $200,000 in the capital fund towards the down payment on the 2025 Maxi Sabre pumper tanker.
Can I have a seconder?
I, Counselor Fox, second.
Okay, any questions, comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. Thank you. All right, so we're now with the proud owners of a brand new red fire truck. Moving on to item 7, Canada Community Building Fund. Peter's going to give us some information there. Otherwise known as the gas tax.
Is it this one?
No, this isn't it. That's all you.
This is what we got.
Yep.
Okay.
This was just the thing. Just what's up when we get everybody a copy, because nobody's got it.
Oh, is that what you got? Yeah, take a look at it. Why you mentioned that before?
I know, I'm
Glasses.
sorry, these are super small.
Good luck with that.
I can't read it, yeah, it's okay.
So, do you want me to plug it in over here? And put it on the TV?
Actually,
Yeah,
I
would you
can,
rather?
I can read it, actually.
It's difficult, but I can read it, yeah.
I could just do this.
It's braille.
How does the truck work?
I can.
Yeah, I don't know to see it.
Yeah, it's,
I really don't
Oh, actually, I can.
I think my iPhone is.
No,
I do that so much with
They're
my
just gonna go over the
photos.
highlights
Yeah,
of what it is on here, so we
yeah,
just move along.
that's fine.
Yeah.
Don't worry about Chair, we just go over the highlights. Thanks for trying though.
Thanks, Aaron.
I'll take it back. Oh, it's there, it's
Oh.
there.
I can't sense you read it any better over there than I can on here anyway.
We'll leave it up and in case you can see it, then great.
Okay. Okay, so, at our last meeting, I brought forward our 5-year capital plan. This is for the Canada Community Building Funds, which was formerly our gas tax. So we need to submit a new plan, which is the 2024-2028. We didn't last year because there was no project that we were bringing forward anyway, so there was no big time crunch to do it. So the very first one is protective services, which is the fire truck. So if you recall, we had an amount in there at the last time and we decided that we would take it out. However, the amount that we had under parks and playground, I have moved up to the 2028. So I'll come back to that afterwards. So protective services, we had decided that the fire department has been asking for a very long time for a training tower. So we figured under 2027 that we would put in the $100,000. The public transit, which was the traffic study, that was in there at $250,000 if you recall, and we found out that we couldn't do a traffic study under our Canada Community Building Fund. So you had requested that we add the $250,000 into the water study. So if you go down to the next study, or down to the next line, that is our water study. I contacted Gemtech that did our strategic plan, just to ask them what kind of money we would ever be looking for to do a water study. I had no idea if we were going to look at $350,000 or we'd be looking at $1 million. So he suggested that we do a study. It is like a hydrological study, and he said, like, if you put in the $100,000 to do that study, then council could decide later on if they want to go further, do test hole testing or whatever they do, like the well testing. Because he said if you kind of put that all in 1 year, then you might want to do another project, right? So if we kind of do at least this first part of the study first, and then you can decide what you want to do afterwards with it. So we need to figure out something with our heating system in the community hall, and because that is kind of recreation, it is allowed under our gas tax or Canada Community Building Fund. So the $250,000 that we had put under the traffic study originally, I just moved it down, and we would do the heating system for the community center for this year. So then you guys had talked about a boat launch. So do 50,000 in 2026 and 50,000 in 2027. So then parks and playground. We had, I think it was $400,000. We were going to call it phase 2. So I contacted Luterio at the Canada Community Building Fund and asked him if we could put in such a thing as phase 2. He suggested that we don't put anything there until we use all of the funds that are still outstanding from our last plan. So as our auditor just said, we've got like $1.5 million in that. So I also asked if you recall in that plan, there was, 162,000 that we had allocated for the school equipment or whatever, so I asked him if we could move that into the parks and playground. And he said, any of that money, it doesn't matter where, what category it goes, because at the end of the year, I have to say like where we spent it. So he said, as long as the bottom line is used, they don't really care what it goes, but it has to be towards projects that are already approved or whatever. So he said, don't put in phase 2. He said, if we decided later on we've used all that $1.5 million and we're like, okay, well, we need to have additional parks, we can amend this plan and change these numbers around, okay?
Timeline restriction or no?
Nope, so, because this is 2024,
All the way through.
2028,
Yeah,
right,
okay.
so within that time. So you had agreed that we would do our recreation master plan. And then we had talked about doing possibly a water park. So I spoke to our recreation department and he suggested a water park is such a short time that you're able to use that. Field house, sportsplex, whatever we decide, that is for all ages. It can be used year-round type thing, plus it would also give us a revenue stream, so I don't know if, I have to put in this plan, I have to state what we're going to do. So that is one thing that we do need to kind of decide if you want to do a field house or if you want to do the water park. That's kind of my main thing, and Councillor Heisel, I'll just finish these last two and then I'll come back to you. Then the next one was our housing needs assessment, because this is a plan that has to be in place by 2030. And our climate change plan for next year. So we'll finish doing our net zero for this year, and then our next phase is this climate change plan. So I will bring it back to water park and field house. So with that, if you guys want to feel that you want to talk more, we can have another meeting. We can bring in Taylor with Recreation Department. We can go over different ideas. We can pull up more things, and we just wouldn't make a motion on this tonight, and we could wait until a future motion. I actually asked him what happens if we didn't have this done by March 31st, and he said you might get an email or two from me, but he said it's really not a big deal, so.
So it'd be safe to push it to the April meeting if we had to.
If you want to, yeah. So if we want to discuss further, we certainly can, and like I said, if you...
Okay, Councillor Heisel has a question?
Not so much a question as just an observation. So when we first were building, or thinking about building, even this building, the Recreation Committee, I think Councillor Mackenzie will remember this, part of it was that a field house would be attached to this building. Obviously, we don't have the room for it anymore, but I absolutely love the idea of a field house, because it is something that I believe all residents would be able to use. If you look at the one on the north side, it's very well done. There's always people in there using it for all kinds of sports, and as you say, it could be a revenue source. But I also like the idea of having a small splash pad. I don't think it needs to be huge. It doesn't need to be a big park unless we decide we want to go that way. But if I was to choose one over the other, I would go with the field house.
So with that, we have allocated for 2028 for the $1 million. You could always split it down the middle and say 500 for the park and 500 and then borrow the rest. I don't even know what this water park would cost. Maybe that is something that we could possibly get some values on before we meet again to discuss, and then you could like if it comes in at say 300,000, then we could put 300 and then 700 to a field house. So I'm not saying that you can't have both, I just kind of needed some direction of how you might want to do it, so.
Councillor Jonah. Sorry, Deputy Mayor Jonah.
I'll go there. Hold a second. Yeah, no, I think we need to have a fair bit of discussion about it, because I mean, I don't know what's entailed in a field house. I don't know what we would want. I mean, we've been talking various different things. I don't know if we want a rink, we want an arena, we want a swimming pool. What is it, what do we want in this field house? And we're not gonna build it for $1 million, you know, so. It's a fairly major decision that I don't think is gonna be made by April. I have no problem with like I say, a small splash pad somewhere, or even a couple somewhere, since we're so spread out. But it'd be nice to know the cost of those too, you know, just what's involved, and not a huge one like downtown, but, I mean, it's a lot to decide, you know, in a month or two. I mean, because of all the things that are going on with the city as far as the, you know, the pool and, you know, the arenas and that sort of thing. I mean, it's a fairly major decision for the community if we want to get into something that large, and you know, we need to give it some thought. Because I mean, I don't know what you're going to build. You're not going to build a field house of any. You can't even build a shed out here for $500,000. So we kind of need to.
Nice to have some kind of an idea.
And you're not going to use it all out of gas tax either.
No,
so,
oh, absolutely.
Right, so
No,
like you're to your limit on
no,
this,
yeah,
right? So
yeah, it's a really major decision, but yeah, like it's. I don't think we can just sit here and say, oh, let's build, you know, half and half or something like that. We need some, and it would be great to have Taylor in here and see his opinions as what's available and what we, you know, and make it kind of it's going to be a little more of a long-term plan, I think, than just for the next couple of years.
Okay, Councillor Holt had a comment?
Essentially, I think we should have Taylor sit here and, okay, as far as the field house is concerned, this is what I envision in his own personal, because he has a heck of a lot more experience in that particular field. He also knows what's going on within the province.
Yeah, be a good idea to get his thoughts for sure.
For his thoughts. I would love to see a pool, small pool, rather than splash pads, but then that's my own personal preference. I at one time thought splash pad would be nice, but if we could more or less attempt to determine what the cost of a pool would be, just a small one, again, I'll go back to Salisbury, something that they have in Salisbury. Yes, it's seasonal, but it does provide the residents with June, July, August, September, and the bold ones October, some activities where the kids could be swimming, the adults could be in for exercise and aquasize, that lifeguard and swimming lessons could be taken. Because again, Councillor DeCleva, you know, has stated that it's difficult for her to get her kids into a swimming program. I don't think we'd have any problem with that.
Okay, Councillor Fox next.
Yeah, I too would like to kind of hold off at least until the next meeting. We do have a resident coming to talk about the benefits of an artificial turf field. So I would like to hear that before we make a decision. I'd also like the input from Taylor in terms of field house, because I think field house would be great as well. It's year round. And I'm also in favor of pool over a splash pad, but again, I think that just takes more discussions.
can I just answer to that?
Sure.
And I do know Taylor mentioned to me, he said the one thing he fears about the pool, there is not enough lifeguards to even mandate the pools and stuff that they have now.
There's a national lifeguard shortage.
There is.
And even provincial lifeguard shortage right now.
Okay, Councillor McKenzie.
So we gotta think long-term strategy, like there's a shortage of that right now, the same way as there's been a shortage of nurses and things. Eventually that's going to turn around, so we shouldn't not build something right now because 5 and 7 years from now, there might not be a shortage anymore. Like that's, things like that are cyclical because of lack of planning, basically. And that will eventually resolve itself, so like that's, I don't see that as a reason not to build a pool. Personally, I agree with the field house and what the other things have been around the table here today. My vision of it would basically go along the road of something like the Q-Plex. as, especially to go along with here, we had the artificial turf right next to the field house area with like the Q-Plex did with the combination of the splash pad and a small lap pool. That's a lot of things, and a walking path inside their field house that's usable 365 days a year. All those things, it comes with a $10 million price tag, but it's a strategic ad over 50 years for the community. It's not a short-term vision. This is something that's gonna last for a very long time. So if we're paying it off for 25 years, we have 50 years of benefit for the community as we grow. And like there may be some ideas of where we put all these things and what location we grow with, like we were talking about earlier tonight. Like how does that impact things with the growth of the community as we spread out?
We place it on our
Bernadette, so-
program, we're gonna go.
Yeah, exactly. So like as Bernadette in that area that continues to grow, like maybe that's, we push it towards further down that way a little bit. Like there's lots of things that we still need to talk about that, and we obviously should have Taylor's input as well, but there's a lot of things here that aren't really being taken into consideration for long-term strategic value that we probably should be talking about a little more. And I hate the fact that we have to talk about things, but it seems like nothing ever moves forward, but that's how you have to still work on things. You can't make snap decisions over things that last for 50 years. You have to plan out some kind of strategy with it and how it's going to impact the
Yeah,
long term.
and maybe if it was big enough, we could have, joint effort between, say, New Maryland and Harvey or something like a
Yeah,
Tri-County
maybe they
complex.
would, especially if it's more centrally located between the communities and stuff like that, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's all. for me.
Councillor Leclerc?
I was just thinking, I really like the Q-Plex idea. I really liked that pool. That was a really neat idea with something that suited everybody. I do appreciate the field as well. And I just wondered, like, could you, if you were not exactly sure on what you wanted, could you allocate some of that money for planning for future thing that you were going, like, a planning, whatever, does that fit? Like
Some plans do, I can,
design? I'm not trying to recreate stuff here, but I'm just saying, like, if you were, like, we don't know what we want now and we have to submit it, like, is there a way to submit it and leave it kind of open-ended in a way?
yeah, and I mean, so all of these, the plans that we do have in place that we wanted to do in 2025, I was thinking that it would be more like June, July, like that end, because I thought that this might take us a little bit of time. So, yeah, like we're not in any hurry for me to submit this.
Yeah, $1 million has been allocated to 2028 also. Councillor Dooley?
There's a shift happening in sport, youth sport, it's believed in Canada that hockey is our game, but in actuality, there's pretty easy data that says, soccer is, by far superseding any of the enrollment in hockey. So with growth, the plan to bring in new family and develop in Hanwell and whatnot, I think it's really important for the planning, understanding what our intent and trajectory is. The Q-Plex is a great example. I mean, that area of St. John, I guess I won't say St. John, but the KV area exploded, as a result of it, in a good way. So, I think planning and understanding where we're going with it is key. And if the budget's there to be able to help understand that, and if that, like to Darren, Councillor McKenzie's point, like with, the presentation tonight, I mean, that's all encompassed, right? Knowing where the growth can be and what the positive spin-offs of, where you put it and all that sort of thing. So planning, I think, is knowing that some of that money could possibly go towards it, I think is key.
Okay, Councillor Holt?
As far as funding is concerned, this is something we perhaps would ask an expert, but however, there's many arenas, field houses around now that actually are sponsored by a company or whatever. There's a fantastic arena out west that's at the Brandt Center, I do believe it's in Regina. Having 2 or 3 major sponsors that donate money or put money into it to have their name on it. Again, I don't know how it works, but that is perhaps a potential source of significant money.
That's
to help
another,
build
certainly
those.
another stream to look into.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
Councillor Heisler.
I just want to, and talk about in the planning aspect, I think the recreation master plan, which is what we're looking towards, will
Identify
help
that.
and identify some of this as well, along with what they presented tonight with the city sketch and that. I think it'll be interesting to see where it could go. And I think it'd be interesting to see looking outside the box, like we talk about having like seniors home, well, could we add on like a field house to that portion somehow to, or something in that line, or do we do a cubeplex? Like, I think it'd be interesting to see where the recreation master plan will take us.
How much land we need for a cubeplex.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
So council, under the capacity building, it says includes investments related to strengthening the ability of municipalities to develop long-term planning practices, including capital investment plans, integrated community sustainability plans, integrated regional plans, housing needs assessments, asset management plans, all related to strengthening the ability of recipients to develop long-term planning practices. So it could possibly be included
Have to check
in there.
Luke.
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's council's wish to do with this motion 7 here tonight? Where are we gonna go with that?
I think that we
Wait,
should
wait,
just
wait.
leave it,
Wait.
especially, we've got the gentleman coming to talk to us about that. Maybe we can find out some costs. I do know the recreation director at the,
Field house?
Qplex or whatever
Yeah.
in Quispamsis. I might be able to contact them and see if they can give us a rough idea of how much it was. Granted, that's been built for,
It's about 12 years now, I think, yeah.
so we can probably double that.
All
Or
right.
whatever, but, let's just leave it and we'll talk about it again and we'll bring Taylor.
Yeah, we've got some time, we don't
Oh, yeah.
decide tonight,
Yeah.
so we'll
Yeah.
table it for the time being
Yeah.
and
Oh,
bring it
yeah.
up possibly at our next council meeting.
this little budget is just a drop in the bucket for a place like that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
No,
Oh, it'd have to be
it's
capital
not until
warrant for sure.
2028.
So, yeah.
Okay, so item 7, Canada Community Building Fund has been tabled. Our next move, I believe, is going to close session. Can I get a motion to go into closed session, please?
I, Councillor McKenzie, move to go into closed session.
Secondary,
Councillor Holt, second the motion.
question, comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried, thank you. So, okay, we're now in closed session. Okay, need a motion to come out of closed session?
I, Councillor Heisler, move to come out of closed session and return to open session.
Secondary,
I, Councillor Holt, will second.
questions, comments?
On which,
Come in closed session.
oh, yeah, no, that's fine with me.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded. Motion carried, thank you.
Okay, I'd like to motion, I, Councillor McKenzie, motion to accept the quote from Tony's Music Box for $2,880.93 plus $432.14 HST for a total of $3,313.07 to expand our portable and wireless PA sound system.
Secondary,
I, Councillor Holt, will second that.
comments, questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn. Councillor
Meeting
Heisler.
adjourned at? I don't have a clock.
8:36.
8:36.